How to Collaborate with Confidence. Brought to you by LiveLab Learning. LiveLab Learning is a subsidiary of Academic Corp, a wholly owned applied software company created to provide world-class training to building design and engineering professionals. My name is Eddie Moll, and I'll be your moderator today. Throughout our presentation, we encourage you to interact with us by typing in questions and comments using the questions pane, and we'll be answering these questions at the end of the presentation. Also, we are recording today's session, and we'll make the link to the recording available to you very soon. Lastly, if you haven't already, search for LiveLab Learning on Facebook and like our page to receive more training opportunities. Okay, let's get started. I'm pleased to welcome today's speaker, Mr. John Ade. John Ade is the Senior Application Specialist for AEC BIM Consulting Services and the Applied Software Director of Technical Services. John's a registered architect and an Autodesk Revit certified professional with more than 29 years of experience and has practiced architecture for a number of Atlanta's leading architectural firms. John has extensive and specialized knowledge of IT management and CAD BIM system support, development, and implementation. And this focus has allowed him to help companies in their practical application to solving today's complex design and project challenges. As a senior application specialist specializing in BIM and VDC at Applied Software, John provides consulting services, project mentoring, and application training to leading firms throughout the Southeast. His unique background in both project management and technology deployment allows him to provide valuable consulting on executive strategies, which assist owners and principals in the deployment of BIM solutions. All right, John, you ready?
Yes, now I'm ready. Thank you, Eddie. I was just muted there for a second.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And so today, I wanted to start off just give you an overview of what we're going to cover. Obviously, we'll start off with industry trends, those things that are driving business challenges, the things that we're all faced with, and we want to talk about data management and how that how that is perceived by the industry, what people typically think of when they think of data management, and maybe dispel some of the misbeliefs or misconceptions as to what it is. Talk a little bit more about why you would consider data management. Everybody has some form of data management, but is it the right solution for you? Then we're going to give a data management overview and our solution, the Autodesk solution, and talk a little bit in specifics about BIM integration. There's a lot of questions about how Revit specifically, but BIM in general, is accommodated by data management solutions. And so I want to spend a little bit of time on that, conclude our conversation, then open it up for questions. So that's our agenda for today. So we're going to start off with industry trends, and we're all experiencing these in some form or fashion. BIM, I've been working in the industry a number of years, as Eddie said, and I started off drafting on the boards, managing documents in file drawers and pin bar and managing printing and all those things that some of the people who have been practicing architecture, engineering, buildings and so on have experienced for a number of years. Well, BIM is still somewhat of a newcomer on the block. It's not that new of a concept, but the tools have finally caught up to the reality and given us better tools for doing better project design and better project delivery. However, those have also created not only opportunities for us, but also requirements by the owners to get more information out of the design. So BIM not only is making it more capable for the AEC community, but also for the owners to leverage the design for their own uses beyond constructing a project. So the BIM momentum is still continuing to grow, and more people are adopting it, more and more people are learning more about it, and more people, especially owners, are mandating it. Of course, because of that, the projects are becoming larger, some of them, and more complex with a lot more requirements. requiring a little bit more intelligence about not only what you're doing with these tools, but how you're controlling the information that you're producing and disseminating it to the shareholders in the project. And of course, with that complexity comes an explosion of information, not just in terms of files, but the actual data that you're using to analyze the project, to make decisions based on that project, to track it, and the list goes on and on. And because of latest technologies, the ability to actually access this on mobile devices pretty much anytime, anywhere, when you need it. So all these are trends that, again, we're all experiencing to some degree. And so what other trends or drivers are also kind of out there in the industry right now? So this idea of big data. So there are companies that have been dealing with big data for years. Two of the ones that come to mind for me, aside from our federal government, which deals with a lot of big data, is going to companies like Amazon and Google. They process just immense volumes of data, and they've learned to do it very well. They manage file data very well, and not only the files and the distribution of them, but also what's in them, if needed. And so because of BIM, because of more restrictive regulations, code requirements, desires to be more energy efficient, there's a lot more complexities in the business place, not only for us as designers and builders, but it's also for owners who are wanting better performance out of their facilities and better planning and better operations and maintenance. And then productivity pressures. Not only do we have better tools, but because of those better tools, the expectation is that we can produce this stuff better coordinated, better designed, for a better product, and faster. So everybody's on the line now to not only use tools that facilitate better design, better construction, better operations and maintenance, but also to do it faster and with fewer errors. So that's a lot of pressure on everyone in the industry to outperform what they've done in the past, but also outperform their competition. So this is just a slide to kind of sum this up in a few bigger concepts, if you will. Things are getting more complex. The complexity is good, but the complexity also requires a way of managing that complexity. So things that support complexity are supply chain, worldwide project execution, dealt with clients working on projects across the globe with teams distributed across multiple countries and making that work. And then BIM mandates, the requirements that are that have to be met for some of these larger, complex, and even smaller projects these days. Differentiation. We just talked about how there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of drive to not only execute better designs, but also do them faster and make them leaner and with less waste. And then margin, because of this and because of the competition pressures and the reduced time and fees not growing, in some cases even getting smaller, and our hope has always been as an industry for them to get larger, is increased competition also means that your margins are much narrower, meaning that whatever you do with the tools and with your processes has to create more margin for yourself, more efficiency, so that you're more productive. So complexity, differentiation, and margin. This is kind of a way of just encapsulating it. This number could be different for you. It is for everybody, but the fact is that most people can identify that they have inefficiencies, time spent searching for information, sending out the wrong information, having to resend information, having to resend it because somebody didn't get it. So not only might they get the wrong information, but they may not get it at all. And so all this adds up to lost time, time that has to be accounted for somewhere, and time that costs you money because it's making you more inefficient. We tend to do analyses with our clients just to help them identify where specifically that they're spending time and how a solution, a data management solution and a collaboration solution alone can help them become more efficient and recoup some of that time. Oftentimes the recognized waste and the tool and the solution that will minimize that pays for itself even within a year's time, if not less. So this is just a way to start talking about data management and where it starts. And although we tend to focus on the project as an industry, as architects, engineers, contractors, even the owner, the client, a lot of times I would rather say that it really starts with the enterprise, because data management, managing the flow of information, the flow of documents, the right documents at the right time is integral to the success of any organization, whether it's about the project or not. But certainly within the framework of AEC and owner and operations, we do focus on the project. But I don't want people to miss the point that data management can help the organization from top to bottom. So what are the challenges out there? So we already talked about complexity, we already talked about information explosion. Well, that translates into dozens of models, hundreds and thousands or even thousands of drawings on a project. I know I've worked on projects that had thousands of drawings, multiple sets being issued for a multi-phase, multi-building project, storing and finding of other project or related information to that project. That's often a challenge in making sure that you have found the right information. The mobility of it, making sure that you can get it where it needs to go in a timely fashion and with the confidence that it is the right information. You know, is it secure too, making sure that the right people have access to it, but people who don't need to or shouldn't have it don't get it. And then data management for new projects. You know, making sure that it's consistently applied throughout your organization in all projects. These are all challenges that we all face, and we all address them in different ways. So obviously, this translates into dollars, people's time. So managing those multiple models, getting them distributed, making sure the right project information is available and accessible, collaborating across extended team, both within an organization and outside of that organization, and sharing that information with the project stakeholders, and leveraging models for business processes. So not only is BIM data or project data now exclusive to construction, design, construction, and commissioning, but also for the operations of the building. Owners are starting to get educated and become savvy about making requirements that are going to affect their bottom line through a better operating building. So that's pressure on us to not only build a better or design a better building, but also make sure that we can get it constructed and in operation quickly and with the right information for the owner to leverage later on. So what is that impact on business? Obviously, project delivery. There are multiple iterations of files, versions of files. How do you track that? How do you make sure that the right version is the one that gets distributed at the right time for major milestones in the project? This explosion of files are coming from multiple sources. So again, how do you manage that? How do you make sure that the information coming from outside sources or other members of the team outside the organization are being managed in such a way that, again, you can deliver the right information when it is time? Because you don't want to have to deal with incorrect versions getting distributed and the cost of what may be the result of actions being taken off of incorrectly distributed data or files. It could also translate into the delaying the delivery or the completion of a project, and obviously that translates into printing and distribution costs and extra time wasted just trying to catch up on that. And then of course unbilled time. If time was scheduled for any of these operations and you have to redo them or repeat them because of these mistakes, that adds up to that time that could be recaptured and affect your bottom line in a positive way. So obviously searching for files, searching for information alone, data in files being able to track those files, moving them, opening, accessing, and delivering them. So this is where I like to talk about data management. What is it? And this could be a large debate, if you will, because I'm going to put some things up here on the screen that are probably very common to many of you. There's probably pros and cons with each of them, and I'm not going to go into a great deal of depth with each one, but obviously the first and foremost is Windows Explorer, or for those working in a Mac environment, the Apple File Management System. So basically files and folders, right, and how you group them, how you store them on a network, how you make them accessible. We all have to deal with that, and file management really, or data management, really starts with that. However, it's very loose, it's very basic, not very sophisticated, but it is what we all know. Email. Email is now a core or mission critical piece of information that is used in every project and in every business. However, email, I would contest, is improperly used much of the time. It ends up being conversations when it is intended for distribution of information. Conversations sometimes are better had on the phone or in person. So email sometimes becomes a substitute, but not always the best substitute. But you do need to track that information. You do need to manage it, and you need to be able to record it and report on it. FTP, basically an extension of, if you will, a Windows Explorer or file management system, where you are giving that information access to outside people. A lot of people use FTP. We have one in our own organization, and there's more sophisticated versions of it. But again, it's more of a just a file management system. Dropbox. A lot of people have started using this, the free version or the paid version. I always warn people away from it, not because I think it's a bad thing. However, it does have some security holes in it, and people have experienced virus attacks through files spread through Dropbox. So you got to be careful of things like that. Make sure you know more about them and how secure they are. So security is a big issue with tools like Dropbox. And Dropbox is not the only one. PlanGrid. PlanGrid is a little bit more sophisticated FTP solution, if you will. It's a cloud solution and allows the distribution of construction documentation and other files related to a project. And it does have some version control. Basically, it will store past postings as past versions, but it's not really versioning the file itself. But it's its own form of version control. Nuforma, becoming very popular in the industry. It is a project information management system as they sell it, and it's a pretty sophisticated tool, and it will track things like emails and files. It has viewers, it has markup, and so on. Good tool, but is it an enterprise tool? Can it really extend to all data and all systems within an organization? And so that would be my question to those using Nuforma. It's not a bad tool. It's better than the ones that I just listed before it, but is it really a full data management system? Autodesk 360, starting to talk about some of the Autodesk products. Great tool, free tool for storing some files in the cloud and sharing them with specific people, so it does have some security. It's a light form of data management, but certainly not a solution unto itself. BIM 360 Field and Glue, again, tools leveraging the cloud with specific application tool sets overlaid on top of them for addressing particular workflows in field and collaboration. Again, they contribute to overall data management, but by themselves, they're just a piece of the puzzle, and certainly there are others out there. We could probably talk about this for 30 minutes alone. But these are just some of the current and better known and best known examples of what people think of as data management. And so we like to kind of sum that up as a kind of a traditional way of sharing data between entities. Now, granted, a tool like Nuforma and even an FTP might start to centralize some of this, but in a traditional sense, you have different entities, different partners in a project who have different access, different contributions to the design or to the overall project. Most times that information starts with information or requirements defined by the owner. They want something built, they want something designed, and so they're going to come up with a list of requirements. It may be a program, maybe BIM requirements, so for tracking data or equipment in the design and so on, but they're going to come up with that. They're then going to disseminate this information to the various parties. It may be just the architect to begin with, it may be individual consultants, maybe even a contractor and some of their subcontractors to start to get pricing. Then of course the architect may develop a design based on that program and do a similar process. And so this just ends up being copies of some of the same data being copied to some of the same entities, and what ends up happening over time is files just keep getting sent back and forth to different people. Files keep getting replicated in iterations of them, but nowhere is that information centrally stored, and the versions of them centrally tracked so that you know exactly when something was issued to whom and that they received it. And so this ends up being a little bit more of an honor system and a manual way of tracking this information. So getting beyond the basics of data management, why would you want data management? You want a vision for project delivery and collaboration. You want a good solution for it, and you want something that fits into your everyday workflow. So obviously you want to deliver complete and accurate connected digital information across the project lifecycle for whoever needs it, whenever they need it, and wherever they are. I mean, that's the big picture goal for data management, providing the right information to who needs it when they need it. So some of these challenges, we already talked about them, so just to enumerate them again, you're managing a large volume of design data, whether it's BIM models, whether it's AutoCAD files, whether it's Civil 3D files, whether it's Plant 3D files. You have a variety of different design tools that are tailored to different industries and different needs using similar data types, but again, just volumes of data and versions of those files, and multiple people needing access to them at the same time or at specified times, and you need to maintain project data related to those files consistently, and that is a huge challenge for most people. So what is the solution? Well, if we describe the solution, it's to easily create, organize, and share this project information. We want to use collaborative tools and workflows to disseminate design concurrently to all the shareholders when they need it during their particular point in time along the development of a project, of a design, or as it's being built. But we want to centrally manage this data in any of the file formats that we're using on the project. And we want to enable sharing of model objects and content from a central location so that everybody's using the right content for the model, so there's not competing content that can confuse the design when it gets to building. And obviously, we all experience this. You get to a point in time in the project when maybe the owner or maybe a cost exercise dictates that maybe we need to go back in time to a point where the design we had made a choice, and we need to go back and take the alternate choice. So obviously storing and being able to quickly access previous iterations of a design. Accessibility, one of the key aspects of data management, being able to get access to the data, the right data by anyone and anywhere. So sharing not only outside of a group within an organization, but extended across multiple offices in an organization, and then outside of the organization to outside consultants who may not have direct access inside your organization. So providing secure access to this information and knowing who's accessing what and controlling what data they have access to, quickly finding the information, being able to search for and find information by key words and metadata associated with every file related to the project. Those are all challenges. And so the solution obviously is to enable that kind of tracking in project history and file history and version history. To also take data from different applications and make it easy for it to be tracked within a central data management system. So the integration of very common products that most of us use for business operations, such as Microsoft Office and Outlook. And flexible security, not only leveraging the security that you already have within your network and within your organization, but also having security control within the data management tool and having a blending of it as you need it depending on the groups who are accessing information. And more importantly, recording all those important milestones and the iterations leading up to them so that you always know what is the most accurate, most current, and complete set of records for a project. Scalability. We are all in business to be successful. Many organizations already have multiple locations and have plans for growth in the future. Goodness knows with population explosion and the aging of most infrastructure, there's a need for designing and building a lot more new space, buildings, infrastructure, and even renovating existing. So the ability to take a data management solution and have it easily scale to extend to multiple offices and multiple countries is a huge challenge and a huge need. So the solution is to have a scalable system for managing data across those offices, to have real-time access by anybody who needs it from one office to the next, and to be able to distribute that information to outside people who do not have direct internal access to the data. So accessing Vault also through Vault data, Vault being obviously the key solution for data management from Autodesk, but being able to provide access to that information through a portal, a SharePoint, Microsoft SharePoint portal. And then another secure access point in a way for not only disseminating information but also collecting it from remote entities is Autodesk Buzzsaw, which complements Vault by giving us the collaboration tool that we need for extending to outside entities. And again, just leveraging Windows authentication for security as well as Vault's own internal security as needed. So now we're going to describe a little bit more about the solution itself, and we're going to focus on three key aspects: collaborative design, and those elements, accessibility and scalability. So these are repeating themes throughout this presentation. I'm trying to keep an eye on the time too so that we leave enough time for some question and answers. So why Vault Professional for collaboration and data management? And what I should have really said is why Vault Professional and Buzzsaw for collaboration and data management. We really think of those as the collaboration data management solution because they complement each other and they provide specific, Buzzsaw provides specific outreach, if you will, outside the organization for outside contributors and entities. So a huge value point for Vault and Buzzsaw is the integration with all Autodesk design applications. The fact that you don't have to change how somebody works in an application for them to access and information in the Vault repository. They have the tools built into the ribbon within the product, and it's simply just a different place to go open file. That's all it is. It gives you a secure central repository for project documentation. It's very simple to administer and configure, and obviously anybody interested we want to talk to about that, but it really is fairly simple to set up and configure. And it's very scalable as we've identified as one of the needs. So as a team grows or as an organization grows into multiple locations or multiple sites, it grows with you. And it gives that project data access across that team. Central management, and interestingly enough, although we talk about central management, but we also talk about distributed offices or locations, we have a way, or there is a way, to synchronize or set up the data so that it is synchronized between these multiple locations, so you actually are accessing it from a local point that is synchronized with a master store of data in say, your central office. And that's what gives you really fast access to the data while at the same time sharing it in all locations with all people who need it. And again, the integration with Microsoft Office and Outlook and the security. You see some recurring themes here, so I might run through them as they repeat themselves. I don't want to keep belaboring those points. Another key feature here that I unfortunately did not make as strong a bullet is the searchability of all this information. Especially with large projects or a firm with multiple projects, you need the ability to search on keywords, the project number, the project name, maybe a date, maybe an owner. Any criteria can be associated with the files, even information within a file, like words within a drawing file or words within a document can be indexed and searched as part of your search criteria. So there's a lot of flexibility in how it's set up and how you can leverage that to find the right information fast. That's a key element to a Vault solution. Again, the data management solution, its ability to capture version or histories and establish milestones. And associated with this is the ability to tie it to what we call workflows, so that as you take information and you release it for a particular release, say you're releasing it for construction, that ends up being a milestone, and then that triggers an event that will notify people that data is ready, and other people may then have access to that didn't have it before. So you can set up varying degrees of access just based on, if you will, the state of a particular file or group of files. So a lot of control, where you need it, and being able to track that history, very important. And obviously through SharePoint and more importantly Buzzsaw, the ability to share this information to people when it is ready that may not be engaged in editing the data directly but need to see it once it's approved and ready for consumption by an extended group of people. Just a little bit more about security and control of access to the data. It's not only about who has it, but the fact that it's there when they need it. So you set up these controls, you set up these workflows. A lot of them are automated, if you will. So once the team has published something, you'll see that you can also extend that reach through Buzzsaw, through the cloud delivery system called Buzzsaw, to even entities such as the client, governmental or regulatory bodies, and so on. Another huge aspect of this that takes not only data management to a higher level is the ability to integrate with enterprise systems. So you may have files that are part of your project that are actually contained in other systems that Vault can actually have access to depending on how you want it set up. So in other words, not only is SharePoint, let's say, a point for distributing information to a group of people, you can also use that, or Buzzsaw, as a way of also disseminating project information that may originate from an ERP or an SAP system, something that ties into Vault that manages a certain type of data within your organization but needs to be shared based on permissions as part of the project, as part of a release or part of a submission. So again, the ability to integrate with enterprise systems is a huge way of expanding that data management control and flexibility. I put these in here just because we talk about the integration in the Autodesk products. It's nice to see just a few screen captures for the different types of people who would use some of these products. I don't have it for everyone. I do have a slide later on that kind of gives a list of the pretty much all the Autodesk products and some third-party products that do have integration directly with the Vault solution. But AutoCAD Civil 3D, obviously for infrastructure projects and civil engineers and surveyors, you'll notice that there's just a tab in the ribbon, and basically you can log into and open up files directly from Vault. We're going to talk a little bit more about some other data types that it can manage and some of the real benefits of its integration with Autodesk products, but just kind of go through these real quickly. And it's very similar from product to product. Another benefit of the ribbon system is that there is some consistency and parity between the different applications in the Autodesk solutions. So again, same tab. Again, Navisworks integration. And again, Plant 3D. So integration through Project Manager. So Plant 3D, Factory Design Suite, they all have tools that are organizing files, and that can all be vaulted or saved and access controlled. Again, a little bit more about scalability, being able to access information from anywhere. I've talked a little bit about Buzzsaw and SharePoint. Buzzsaw is really a way of managing control and not only distribution of information but also collection of information. So it's more bidirectional, whereas SharePoint's kind of more outward facing. VPN obviously would let you or somebody else have access from pretty much anywhere as long as they had internet access directly into a Vault. And then there's also a Vault web client too. So there are different ways of accessing the information once you're external to an organization, depending on how it wants to be set up. I debated whether I keep this slide in here. I think it's just a nice graphic that sums up, if you will, the scalability of Vault and a little bit about how it works across a distributed project team. This is really important because many people that I've talked to in recent well, months, years, are working on projects globally. It's not just about locally anymore, especially if you're competing in the business marketplace. You really tend to expand the markets that you're working in. So arbitrarily, we have a project owner, and obviously they have files and they have people who may need access to that data. This information can be distributed between networks or linked, if you will, and then distributed to even more remote design consultants. And then you can fully replicate or partially replicate what data you need to between different sites, because not every site may have people working on the same project data, but different sites may. So you can actually control how much data is replicated between sites if they only need a certain set of files or a certain set of projects. And so again, it can constantly grow and be expanded as the need dictates. And the cloud creates just yet another distribution point for those who need mobile access, those who are not going to have direct access. So a lot of different ways of accessing the data to make it really flexible to create a solution that fits everybody's own need. So some of the benefits, centrally manage project data, create, organize, share project data, search and version control of project data, security, again, milestones, integration with Autodesk products, ability to share the information, the scalability, so multi-site connectivity and different ways for people to access the data. We talked a little bit before about the amount of time that people may waste or consume repeating tasks or having to redo things because the wrong information is distributed or it's taking too much time to find the right information to distribute and so on. There's also the time that it takes just to access information, and so these are just a couple examples that have been somewhat genericized in terms of who they are, but these are actual numbers that came from a before and after Vault implementation with a couple of different clients and some of their access times. And these are real numbers. It's the ability to not only make it easier to find the right data and access it quickly, but that it actually opens faster too, especially when you're dealing with multiple locations and a project distributed across multiple sites, the history has been that it takes longer for people to open files from a remote location, but if that information is replicated through Vault, then they're opening it locally much faster. So now I want to talk a little bit more specifically about Revit Server and Vault workflow integration. It is really a differentiator in the marketplace. Nobody can at this time really accommodate Revit's own work sharing and data management like Vault can. It does help that the two products are owned and developed by the same organization, but Revit, as anyone knows who's worked on Revit projects, has its own file type that is its own database. So effectively you've got a data management system that works off of a database managing a file type that has its own work sharing and distributed way of working with multiple people, and its own file type that is its own database also. So what that means is if you're working in a work shared environment with Revit and you're in a single office, you obviously have simple work sharing, central file, local files, and it's very similar how Vault handles that as it does with Revit Server, but I'm going to focus on Revit Server because it takes work sharing and expands it to multiple sites. And so in Revit Server, and I'll step through this slowly and try and be as concise as I can. I tend to talk a lot, so concise is not my first line of thought. You may have multiple sites working on a central project. You employ Revit Server to house the file in the main location, and then you have Revit Server in one or more alternate sites, and they basically accelerate or replicate that data. And so when people are working on a project, they access either their local Revit Server accelerator or their local Revit Server host. And Revit Server then controls how the different people working on the project at the same time can access data. That file by itself still has to reside on a network so people have network access to the Revit Server. Okay, so while you're working on the project, there are all sorts of other data file types that are also involved in a project, not just Revit, but this is specific to Revit. But we do like to make sure that you're recognizing, or that we recognize, that there's Word files, there's Excel files, there's PowerPoint, there's Microsoft Project, there's PDFs, there's DWFs, there's emails, and so on. It goes on and on. But these are some of the usual suspects. What happens is that Vault allows you access even to a Revit Server housed project by accessing it the same way you would any other project that you do now. You would just open it through Vault, and Vault knows to open it on the Revit Server. So the workflow doesn't change, and while you're working on it in Revit Server and in different locations for replication for faster access, what Vault does for us is it gives us the ability to, based on a time trigger or based on a manual operation, maybe at a major milestone, is also Vault the project, Vault the Revit Central model, so that we have a record of it at certain points in time as part of the Vault version control, and certainly at major milestones. So it works in parallel with Revit Server because there's no way to get away from that at this point. Revit Server is the tool for a distributed team across multiple offices within an organization, but Vault works in tandem with it to access that data. So you're doing that consistently through Revit. And better yet, I hope I have a slide for this, but I'll mention it here in case I forgot that slide. For those of you who have experienced this, Revit Server only manages Revit files. The problem with Revit Server, or the challenge with Revit Server, is when you have DWGs maybe linked in as background information or overlays or for reference, and you need that in multiple sites on a Revit server project, and you have to then replicate those files around. Vault controls that so it maintains the pathing and takes those files with it to all locations. So it actually eliminates that issue that most people have with Revit server. And again, because Vault is tied in tandem with Buzzsaw, when there is a released or approved set of documents, you can use Buzzsaw then to reach out to the extended team. So just another way of looking at this, you have a corporate entity, you may have an outside consultant, you may have other consultants, sub-consultants, people who need to access data via mobile devices, the contractor on the job site, and they all have direct access to the corporate vault. Let me go back a step. I'm not going back, I'm going forward. There we go. But what happens if security requires that some of these entities cannot have direct access, but maybe one of the outside consultants do? They can still have direct access to Vault. The others then get their access via Buzzsaw to the Vault data. And not only can they get information when it's made available, controlled by the corporate entity, but they can also contribute data through that cloud Buzzsaw portal. And then again, just showing you that that relationship may change or may have a different structure. Again, they would just, that outside consultant would also access data and share data through Buzzsaw also. Getting a little short on time, so I'll kind of go through some of these slides quickly. I think I got some of the main points of the Revit integration, but real-time collaboration, obviously within an organization, a team that has access, you can actually make it so that everybody can access live models with Revit. That's not always really what we want. Most of the time we want right-time collaboration. And what I mean here, it's the difference between an architect having, say, a structural engineer's model directly linked that they're working off of, which means that any time there's save to central, they'll all of a sudden see through a refresh in the link changes to the structural model. You probably don't want that, and I wouldn't even recommend it as part of a good workflow. But what you can do is you can use Vault to release data and publish it so that when somebody has made a change and it's ready for you to get it, you can then get it for your particular discipline. And that may be daily, that may be every other day, it may be every week, but it could be set up on a time frame or manually when you want it to be. That's right-time collaboration. Real-time tends to be excessive and not really what you want, and only adds confusion because while people are working on things, crazy things can show up until they get to the point where they're really ready for you to use that information. So we like to point out the difference between real-time and right-time. Both are supported. Right-time is the one that I think you should focus on more. And that's more of a workflow issue than whether data management and Vault can handle it. Content management, huge. With any one of the design tools, there's a lot of content that needs to be managed and created and disseminated, and Vault can be a central point for controlling the development of content, the release of it, and the distribution of it from a central point. That can be families or families in Revit, blocks in AutoCAD, you name it. It becomes a central, trusted, authoritative point for distributing content to be used on a project or across an organization. So content centrally made available for all projects. This is the image that I was looking for DW links with Revit Server. The typical relationship here with Revit Server by itself is once you've linked them in one location, they don't automatically translate to the second location. But through the installation and deployment of Vault for data management, those DWGs are now associated with the Revit file through the Vault, and they will show up in any locations you're accessing it through Vault. Huge differentiator. Document coordination, another key feature of the Vault solution is the ability to publish DWFs. that then can be issued for review. They could go to somebody that can do a markup, and then they can distribute that back, and then the person who issued the file for review then can receive the markup and overlay it on top of the design, the view where it was created, and make the changes in the context of the design. So we call this paperless markup. Vault supports it very well. It also has the ability to view files in the Vault client itself. So not only do you get direct Vault integration in the Autodesk products, but you also have a desktop tool for just browsing things. So imagine you're a project manager, you don't know how to or need to use Revit or AutoCAD or Plan 3D or any of these products, but you want to be able to see and maybe even print a view of these models. Vault can be set up to create sheet views automatically, and if somebody has the Vault client, they can even browse to a drawing, get a DWF preview, and even open it up and move around in it and print it. So it supports project management at a level that most firms don't have right now, because a lot of project managers just don't have the time to learn the tools, and a lot of times we don't want them in the tools, but they need to have access to the data. So I like to kind of really reinforce that this document coordination also supports project management operations and workflows very well. I am going to skip through this. We already talked about this a little bit. It's just another diagram kind of showing a multi-office collaboration. This one is just showing, again, replication to multiple offices, but not all offices having all projects. You can be very choosy about which office gets replicated what data from the central store. And even an office can get replication on all files, but again, it may not be needed in every branch office. So again, just to kind of wrap up here, Vault business value for collaboration data management. Talked a lot about integration, standardization, sharing of content, coordination, distribution using Buzzsaw, the ability to access it anytime, the right data anywhere, search for content, capture the version and history and project milestones, and it's really simple to administer and maintain. And then manage multiple sites, so the distribution of data, the support of Revit server, and work sharing, huge features here. So again, this is just reiterating a lot of what I've already said about deep integration, security, setup, access. This is just a kind of giving you a snapshot of the products that it is integrated with. I've highlighted some of the key ones that I've been talking to people about: AutoCAD, AutoCAD Architecture, Revit, Navisworks Civil 3D, the Microsoft Office products. It even has integration for MicroStation for some shops that are still on MicroStation and integrating Revit. I have a lot of clients doing that right now. And so in conclusion, that's our presentation on collaboration and data management. Also kind of focusing a little bit on Revit integration, and we'll take any of your questions now if you have any. Thank you so much for hanging with us for this presentation.
Okay, thank you, John. That was great. That was a very thorough explanation of data management and many of the solutions available. To be so thorough that I don't see any questions. Do you see any questions in the question box, John?
Maybe it was because I didn't leave you a lot of time. People were afraid to ask a question, but I'm more than willing to field anything. And you obviously can always follow up with us later.
Right. Since I don't see any questions, I'd just like to thank everybody for their participation. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure